Joining me now is Corp Columnist Angela Mollard and Sky News contributor Louise Roberts. Ladies, plenty on the Sussexes this week and plenty about what they are or are not, and that continues in flux. Angela, we've seen Harry and Meghan moving in different directions professionally for some time. What's different now?
Yes, you're right. They went over to America. They were going to be a power couple. They were going to be the next Michelle and Barack Obama or the next George and Amal Clooney, and that has not worked out for them. And so they're very much looking at separate professional lives. There's some commentary around the fact that there may be some upset in their marriage as well. But at this stage, it's just looking like they are very much following different paths. Meghan, of course, is involved with American Riviera Orchard, her jams and preserves and dog biscuits, and of course the cooking show that's going to accompany that. Harry's moving back to the things that really meant a lot to him in the past. So that is following his mother's work with the Halo Trust, the Diana Awards, some of his African charities, obviously Invictus. And so they're sort of managing, instead of being a team, now they're being seen as two individuals pursuing very different careers.
And Louise, does this help? Does this, separation at this superficial type level, I suppose, does that help the substantive credibility issues?
Well, I think it can't hurt in a way, Caro, because brand Sussex as a going concern together clearly is in its death throes. And I think to Angela's point, they need to both play to their strengths as well. And I think another mistake they've made is pinning their great romance and love story, the big story of redemption and freedom from the evil royal family, and Harry saying that Meghan saved him on that Oprah interview back in 2021. They've pinned that to their sort of professional footprint, which in a way has meant that they expected that everything would just flow from there, that all the riches would come and all the commercial deals. And of course, that hasn't actually happened. It's been quite the opposite. So they have to try a different tact, and possibly going their separate ways in a professional sense is the best way to do this.
And Angela, you mentioned Africa. Harry's off to visit Centrebale, the charity he co-founded 20-odd years ago. Can you tell us about this trip?
That's right. As you say, he founded this charity back when he was still in his late teens. That was when he'd gone there by the insistence of Mark Dyer, who was one of Harry's staff members from the palace who looked after William and Harry after their mother died. And why that is significant is because this connection with Africa is Harry's heartland. This is the work he loves, he enjoys. It's the work he's fulfilling in the spirit of what his mother loved to do. It was started as a charity for AIDS orphans and for herd workers and young people who didn't have connections, good connections to society. It's broadened, and one of the issues that they're going to be dealing with is upskilling young African teens with a digital proficiency so that they're capable to work in a global sense. Fantastic work, like a really on mission. Is very necessary. I mean, there's going to be a huge youth growth in Africa over the coming decade or so. So I think Harry going back to work in Africa, there's no suggestion at this stage that Meghan is going with him, is not just him going back to a place that he feels very happy, but him going back to the purpose that he first had.
I think that's a really good point. And Louise, these are the sorts of causes that are very much in Harry's wheelhouse. Do you expect him, as we discussed earlier, to really go back and focus on his strengths?
Yes, and I believe his strengths are leadership, obviously from being in the army and those tours of Afghanistan and the Invictus Games he set up, but also the empathy that's directly in his DNA from his mother. And William's the same. So actually playing to those strengths. And I think in a way we will see Harry shine again. I do feel in his efforts to support Meghan and perhaps not overshadow her, he's kind of hit his own light in a way. We haven't seen the wonderful Harry and the skills that he has and the empathy and the resilience. Talking about mental health, grief and everything, it's a massive value for the public to hear this stuff. So I'm hoping he can now go on that path and we'll see Harry, the superstar, back in.
Well, yeah, let's hope. Louise, slightly different tact, and I spoke about this in my editorial, but increasing reports about how difficult Meghan in particular is to work for. Some pretty heavy language has been used. What's been reported that's new this week?
Well, a report went up on the Daily Beast, which is a website in the US, and it really does not pull any punches. It's savage. A lot of it's unsourced as well, and it actually describes Meghan in some pretty horrific terms. It calls her a demon. says that she routinely rips staff and reduces them to tears. People won't work for her anymore because they feel that despite the cachet of working for the Duchess, it's just not worth the grief. Again, all unsourced as well. And I don't think there's any reply from her in that piece either. So it paints a very damning picture of what it's like for Meghan. And let's look at some of the history as to why this story ended up on the Daily Beast as well, because the Hollywood Reporter, which of course is the Bible of the industry, wrote a piece not too long ago describing her as a dictator and in high heels, trying to explain why so many staff, the churn of staff and people disillusioned with working for the Sussexes was happening. Then there was the piece in an American mag, Us Weekly, which just sought to sort of mop up some of the damage there and describe them as a fantastic couple on a mission to heal the world, and they're wonderful to work with. The day after that piece appeared in Us Weekly, then the Beast piece came out, which has caused some damage as well. But she's certainly got some work to do on the reputation front, I feel.
Yeah, and Angela, once there's a loose thread that it starts to be pulled, it's very difficult to quell this sort of story. Do you see it letting up?
Not at all. And I think the reason it's not letting up is because the palace never released the findings of the bullying allegations investigation that the independent review that they undertook a few years ago. Now, nothing was ever published. The whole point of doing that review was that there had been complaints about Meghan. And so as journalists, we know if we don't have an unresolved story, we will keep pulling at that thread, as you know. So people within Meghan's employ, and there have been plenty of them, they may have signed NDAs, but they go and speak off the record about what it was like for them working for her. And then, of course, Meghan and Harry have to counter-brief to get their side of the story across as well. So I don't think it's going to go away. But it dates back way, way back until when Meghan was on Suits. Tina Brown's brilliant book, The Palace Papers, documents how control-freaky Meghan was in those early years, even before she had met Prince Harry. So it's clearly part of her character. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, being Elle Macpherson is somebody who has top-down control over her businesses. You have to if you're going to run a great business, but it's obviously rubbing people up the wrong way.
And still with you, Angela, on that point that you make about the counterpunch, I suppose, the Sussexes do appear to be doing their best to hit back, but it's very, very difficult when there's that tide.
That's right, and as Louise mentioned, they are hitting back, and they're hitting back with named sources, which is, of course, what the Daily Beast didn't have. So they have members of staff on record saying, oh, Meghan and Harry were amazing when my mum was sick, or I got a new dog and she dropped off a dog lead to me. I mean, there was even, as you know, Caroline, there's been a lot of controversy about Meghan expecting people to respond to her at all hours of the day. Well, one member of staff released the fact that her email sign-off, in fact, says, my working day may not be the same as your working day. Please don't feel obliged to respond. Now, if you're going to put out that level of detail to counter-offensive criticism against you, it shows that you're really rattled, and I think they really are.